I want to actually learn a little bit more, kind of moving past college into, your post kind of collegiate dance experiences. And, what does it kind of look like for someone who maybe did dance during college and how they sort of can continue to enjoy kind of that same sort of community, but instead of having to deal with schoolwork, now you deal with adult life or you deal with, having a job and other things that come with the responsibility of being an adult.
Post college, I found myself still wanting to dance, and I actually was going back to UC Berkeley to practice with teams or with groups that were made up of people who also danced in college but just wanted to keep doing it. And we returned to campus because that was the place that felt familiar and the space was free to occupy. And so post college, I joined teams like that. Namely, one of them was like Team Velociraptors at UC Berkeley, or even there was an alumni team of my collegiate team called Senior Stacks, the college version being called Main Stacks. Um, we just had built such great and strong community that we wanted to come together. But naturally, that kind of the rhythms and fashion of these teams change. It's not the same. We can't have these late night rehearsals, and they couldn't be as frequent. And so they'd be once a week, and then they might be seasonal. Um, but I also think a lot of like dancing on a team is not feasible for someone post college as they start to balance work and maybe a family or uh, increased kind of commitments of becoming more of an adult. And so a lot of dancers resort to just taking classes in the local area. I think I mentioned earlier, I used to teach regularly intermediate advanced class in Oakland at In the Groove Studios in downtown Oakland. Shout out to In the Groove. Um, yeah, been a home for many dancers in the Bay Area, especially for people who graduated from UC Berkeley and were looking for a community that kind of fit their age and their stage of life. Um, they did offer a team, and many people auditioned for that team, and it has some of the similar things that a collegiate team would provide, which is community, which is time to spend together, time to eat after a rehearsal, or even shows to compete at or just to exhibit and see other dancers or maybe your old friends from your old college. But a lot of people just like taking class because it's a low commitment thing, but you get to see people that you know regularly. You get to dance like you did in college. You get sweaty. It feels like a workout. And at this point, you have money, right? Like you're choosing into taking this class. So it was a way to feel like you were investing in yourself and putting your money to work for you. And it was fun. And it was kind of pouring back into the community too. So I'd say that's definitely a way for dancers post college to get back into it or to keep it consistent, which is to take classes with people. And of course, classes are designed to improve a dancer, right? You're looking to better your craft, and the teacher, if they are a good one, is equally as invested in doing that for you and with you. Um, yeah, I'd say classes of some sort or programs like that are really instrumental in making dance accessible post college. Yeah.
Would you say that the type of dance experience, like, well, actually, let me ask you this: does the dance experience post college, like when you're taking a class, meeting new people, making friends as adults, right? Like, how does that differ post like the experience in high school? Like you talked about the money and the community building, but is it more expansive in the terms of the types of dances that you're learning? I'm guessing that you also have like traveling or resident or guest uh, dance teachers like as well. Is it something where you learn more choreo? Like, is it a one-time session? Is it like like learning a choreo over maybe 3 weeks or however many days? etc. Like, talk to me about the differences when you're going through dance classes at a.
It's so vastly different, Mike. Yeah, it's so vastly different. I'd say once you're post college, well, let me describe the college scene first from like a 10,000-foot view. Often the collegiate choreography scene is to prepare a dance set that will be performed at some kind of competition or show. And often the dancing is so everyone looks clean and uniformed, and it's not very individual. And so what comes of that is people who train to look clean and have clean lines and look like the person next to them and to match the choreographer as closely as they can. And that can happen in a class setting. But I'll also say that it doesn't. That individuality, I think, is more celebrated in a class setting because you're paying for the class. You're here to learn for you, and depending on the intention of the class or why you're there, you may just want to show out and dance. And so the focus is not the same. The focus is not to create a set and not to necessarily look like the person next to you. The purpose is for you to get something out of this class because you paid for it. Now, the teacher may have an expectation of like, you should be clean and you should look like me, but that is very different than kind of the space that is created for a collegiate scene. It's also different because there's different dance forms and variations that are offered in classes after college. In college, collegiate teams, particularly in California, but it's happened in the East Coast and really across the world now, the dancing looks often similar because these are dancers who are they maybe only just started dancing in college, and so their skill level is still developing, and they're trying to emulate specific choreographers and dance teams that have gained popularity through social media like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. Many of these being Asian American, really amazing dancers, but kind of put on a pedestal, and everyone just wanting to follow that trend or to try what those amazing choreographers were doing. But when you get to a class setting where there's a long history of dance educators and people who are steeped in hip hop and other dance forms, you get to branch out. And so I think it looks different because you can learn something that you've never even touched in college or you didn't know the name of, and you're learning it or can learn it from people who have been doing this for 10, 15, 20, potentially even 30 or 40 years. So I think post-college dance looks completely different. I think what's happening now is dance could look like that in college settings because you build really strong habits as you're in college. That it shouldn't be a surprise when you get to a studio that you can learn a form like locking or a form like break-in, and it shouldn't feel so foreign. Like why are these things happening not as the foundation but as something post a collegiate scene? And it's actually a really big conversation right now in the dance community.
Or I was going to ask, how do you feel like your skill level has evolved, right, since being in a dance team, right, like at Berkeley versus, being, a dancer now, right? Like, talk to me a little bit about that progress personally for yourself, and I think it would be a really great story and perspective to share.
Yeah, I was that dancer who was focusing on choreography and on looking clean, and that has been my thing, because that's what I grew up watching on YouTube. I wanted to be a part of specific teams. I think now post college, I have joined dance teams that have focused more on freestyle and on different dance forms that are outside of just choreography or that have specific names and specific deep-seated histories. I currently dance with a company called Culture Shock Los Angeles, based here in LA. And they focus on dance education and working with youth and just engaging with the community. Right now, we're training in specific styles. I in particular have picked break-in to train in, and I already feel like last night we had rehearsal, and I'm pretty sore and feeling it as it's foreign movement to me for sure. But I can already feel like I'm up leveled as a dancer.
I guess Christian, to pull it back, like what is break-in?
Mm. A lot of people know this as breakdancing. You may have heard it as the dancing that like b-boys or b-girls do. Breakin comes from New York City, where hip hop was born, and it is a street dance form, and one of the pillars of hip hop. And so breaking looks like those the moves that you might see where dancers are dancing on the floor, and maybe spinning or moving quickly with their feet as they're supporting their body with their arms. It's that kind of movement, and it could look like flips or like spins on your head. But that is break-in, and I there's probably better words to describe what that is, but hopefully with that description you get an idea of what break-in is.
Yeah, I definitely have a much better kind of idea of that, and what it actually is. And then talk to me a little bit about how you know what it felt like to learn and go through like this particular style of dance, like in a post collegiate setting.
I gotta give props to Culture Shock because it's so much of dance education today is often void of the history. Um, m- Much of dance as we know it across the globe, and across history actually all stems from Black art forms. We pull a lot of breakdancing grooves and movement from different, mostly Black communities, but indigenous communities too. And so it felt really significant for me to learn these movements and forms because they inform what I've done throughout college. They inform the choreography. Um, it also feels really difficult and kind of a blow to my ego because I'm not good at it. Breaking requires a lot of physical strength, but much like anything else that requires a lot of physical strength, like other sports or weightlifting, it requires a lot of mental strength as well. And being able to kind of push through what hurts or what feels really difficult or really impossible. So for me, it's felt challenging, but it's also felt really fun, and fun for the reasons of me being able to be with community and struggling together with them and in being encouraged by them, but also fun because it's kind of like figuring stuff out for yourself. I feel like I'm being taken back a bit to when I was practicing in my mirror those dance moves that my aunt brought home from a rave. I'm having to workshop these things, or we might say lab them on my own. Post this call, I'll probably be in this space right behind me trying to figure out, how to do a 6 step, which is a movement on the floor that involves 6 different steps of kind of like rotating your body around. Um, it's so tough, but I don't know, it feels really good to engage my body and to kind of unlock different positions or different moves. And it's not just a physical thing. Like I said, it's a mental thing too.
Do you feel that you basically get to go through this duality of being, the student again, uh, relative to maybe something else, another dance that you've gained, relative mastery in, and it's just that constant going back and forth between being the student and the master and starting from scratch almost, right? Like you have some basics, and I'm sure there's some commonalities, but uh, you know, talk to me about that feeling of learning something new, going back to something that you know really well, and then going back again, right? Just that continuous cycle.
It's absolutely humbling, to say the least. I sometimes it doesn't feel good to be a student, right? Like it's the struggle is tough. There's you don't always experience the payoff of being a student because you have to continue working at it. For me, that's what it feels like to learn break-in right now. It's extremely tough. And then I'll go maybe take a choreography class at a studio from someone who their style feels familiar to me, or I've learned their kind of set of vocabulary, or even just being in that setting of I've been to hundreds of classes at this point, and so I know what to expect, and I know that it'll require me to listen to music, and that I can kind of pick apart music and almost anticipate what might happen. Um, and so, yeah, I do oscillate between what feels like familiar spaces or familiar movement to now it kind of feels like a disruption of I'm using my body in a different way. And going between those two, I, I'd rather have it this way, right? I mean, we are very routine based beings, being humans, but I don't know, it just makes life more rich and interesting to challenge myself and try it out and put myself in kind of uncomfortable situations. um yeah, it's a different way to move about the world, literally. Like I'm moving in different ways depending on if I'm in a class where I feel familiar and I can do my thing and I know what I'm doing, and then with breaking a completely new art form, at least to me, that I haven't trained in at all, not proficient in. But if I keep going, I build some proficiency, and hopefully I get to a point where I can start to feel more comfortable, that I can push myself into another space where it is uncomfortable, and then we just level up and continue to do that. Um, yeah, it's not easy, and I gotta say it requires breaks and kind of a long-term vision for pursuing it. But I don't know. I think I've over time post college I've learned the payoff is going to continue to be further down the line, but it's worth it.
I guess that brings me to one of the other points that I wanted to ask you is like during your post collegiate kind of dance career, I'm sure you've uh, leveled up or you've gained more experience in terms of how to take care of your body or how to prepare for a dance routine or even a practice or a class, right? And also how to decompress from all of that, how to rest and recover. So talk to me about like that experience in terms of just mentally and physically and emotionally preparing and decompressing to recover after a dance session or before a dance session.
I have to shout out Keone and Mario Madrid, who are these amazing dancers from San Diego, California, and also led uh, this amazing dance team that I looked up to called Choreo Cookies. But I think they were some of the first people who, at least within my community and my circles, evangelized treating dance as a sport and training like an athlete in order to engage in this sport. Um, they used their social media presence to do many things, but one of the things that they did was show how they trained with a personal trainer so that they could be better dancers. And I think that had a huge influence on the dance community. I'll say today I engage with a personal trainer, and my training is focused on stability and agility and being a better, more mobile, athletic dancer. And I see a lot of the dancers that I look up to now and who are my contemporaries, and many of them are also doing the same thing. And I consider this a part of my preparation, where when I show up and we have a part of rehearsal when we're conditioning, I want to feel prepared and able to take on the exercises that we're going to go through and not have to struggle through them like I felt like I was struggling when I was in college, because I didn't have the right tools. I wasn't focusing on like the right muscle groups or even just the same consistency and cadence that I am now. And so now I feel like I'm a stronger, more prepared dancer because I condition and exercise outside of rehearsal. When I think about decompression, uh, it's definitely rolling out and making sure I stretch out and take care of my body before I go to sleep. But actually, what comes to mind for decompression is spending time in community. And maybe that's just a habit, but that hasn't changed since college. It is maybe a cultural thing to post post rehearsal or post practice or post performance to just hang out and chat and debrief the performance, or just spend time with people, get boba, get food. That almost is a must for any kind of like post dance thing, is some kind of community time. Um, so yeah, I think that's really important. But also is taking care of your body, and like maybe it's a massage gun or rolling out with a foam roller. But yeah, the physical kind of preparation and then post is absolutely crucial, especially as you get older and are post college.
Right. Right. Because like our bodies are not necessarily naturally as malleable as before, unless we're taking care of our bodies and, you know, conditioning it in ways that maybe we might not have in college. Um, I did want to ask. Well, actually, I one thing I did want to I noted and observed when you were talking about decompressing and spending more time with community. Do you think that it could be because you're you mentioned dance is a very emotional and vulnerable kind of routine and experience, and now you get to sort of share and partake and kind of release some of that through chatting with other people after dance sessions and things like that. Like it's a different form of like you don't necessarily have to be in the moment of like you are in dance, but you can also just more freely just share in it with a larger group of people.
Hmm. I, I, it's not intentional. I think it just kind of comes. It's a byproduct of being vulnerable with people after an extended period of dancing and just spending time, and all bodies are kind of in the same place. It's, oh yeah, you feel closer. I remember there was one rehearsal where we were doing some contact freestyle, and I had just felt closer to the people that I danced with, and emotionally, and I think that's normal. Um, but I think that's kind of common amongst humans who naturally, like, we when we're in close proximity with people, normally that comes with intimacy, and this was a non-romantic version of like physical closeness, but I I felt closer to them emotionally, and like better friends because we moved together. And I think that does require trust and vulnerability and a comfort that you maybe, or that I couldn't achieve solely by just talking. There's something about movement and movement together that does bring